AfriScience Network is dedicated to fostering innovative and multidisciplinary scientific research and development across Africa by uniting academia and industry scholars with shared objectives. This thriving community of nearly 10,000 members engages through multiple WhatsApp platforms to enhance research quality, drive innovation, strengthen collaborations, and provide opportunities for knowledge sharing and capacity building. Given the challenges faced by African scientists and the transformative potential of research and development on the continent's socio-economic progress, our mission is more critical than ever. With the right support and resources, the AfriScience Network aims to shape Africa's research landscape and establish the continent as a global hub for scientific excellence. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to the esteemed members of the AfriScience Network and also those who are joining in for the first time. Please join me, everyone, with your favorite emoji as we make welcome our erudite scholar and facilitator for this month's webinar, Professor Lawrence Okonkwo Aka. You're highly welcome, sir. The mic is yours.
Thank you so much for this privilege to share this academic moment with us. I want to salute every one of us for finding time to be part of this meeting. I recognize everybody, thank everybody, but I want to especially recognize Dr. Fashina, who is here in our midst. I want to also thank my special friend, Professor Pilau, and also my good friend, Dr. Bernard Sunday. And to the rest of us, who I may not be able to mention your name, I warmly welcome you to this special session. So I am not going to be speaking to you as a certified psychologist, but I'm going to speak to you based on my objective, perceived, and experiential realities as it relates to this special topic. As you probably have heard in my citation, I have been privileged by divine grace to have been in this job for 28 years. I served 20 years at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. And within these 20 years, I was also privileged to visit several universities in Nigeria. And I had a first-hand appreciation of the state of the psychosocial environment in Nigeria. And God willing, I transited to the West 10 years ago. And I've been privileged to teach mainly Canadians and Americans, few Asians, and I've also seen the psychosocial environment here. So when I was contacted by Professor Soitan on this lecture, I said, I am a consultant physiologist. What am I going to tell diverse persons who have come from different backgrounds, even though all of us may be vets? What do I tell them? And I said, let me deviate a bit from physiology and delve on something that holds all of us together as vets, as educators, as parents, as guardians, as teachers, and as community members, and also those who belong to religious circles, either traditional, Muslim, or Christian. And I came up with this topic, creating the appropriate psychosocial environment for effective learning and research in African universities, a paradigm shift. So when we talk about a paradigm shift, it tells us the fact that we've been somewhere and we need to get to somewhere. So we are on a journey, and as stakeholders in the school setting, we are teachers, basically. We teach within the society, and we have governments in different societies across Africa, and we all come from families, and we belong to communities as well as religious organizations. And like I said, this constitutes the space by which humans are nurtured, and that also transcends to learning. So I said, okay, let's bring it together and draw a comparison between what I have experienced in my Africa and what I am experiencing currently in the West as a teacher. And I will take you on this journey for 45 minutes to 1 hour. I crave your indulgence to pay rapt attention as we move on this journey. So we all are aware of this topic, psychosocial environment. Very soon we'll be discussing it as it relates to learning and research in African universities. So who are the stakeholders in this business? This topic is going to focus on the student, the teacher, the government, of course, who doubles as the policy makers, parents, community, religious belief. And at the end of the day, where are we going? What's about it? It's a vision of a paradigm shift of the psychosocial environment of African colleges and universities to one that is more hospitable to human learning. That goes to show that where we are currently, we probably are not getting it right. Or so to say, that the available psychosocial atmosphere in African universities does not support, as it ought to, effective learning and research. And therefore, I came up with some objectives. Number one, this lecture is going to focus on how we can understand how the psychosocial environment of African colleges and universities should look from its hitherto scenario. Number two, to understand how a respected and protected community of learners and leaders should be attained. Number three, to understand how students, teachers, academic leaders, and administrators should collaborate and share leadership for better learning. Four, to understand that learning requires a good friend and a mentor to see one through and one who helps you keep your dreams alive. And the last objective would be, at the end of the day, at the end of this class or this lecture, we will challenge ourselves and rise up to the occasion of building the right psychosocial environment within our colleges and universities to enable us as teachers to teach well and provide the right atmosphere for our students to learn well. Then I start with a quote by Bio, 1990. So I'm going to take you through some preambles that will form the foundation and that will stimulate our thoughts before we move on to the nitty-gritties of our discussion. Bio 1990 says that teachers who keep up with current development, in other words, we are doing what we know, what we have, what is available to us at the moment. Number two, who devise and assess better ways. That is the key point here. Devise and assess better ways to help students learn, or better still, those who do research on methods of teaching These are the real scholars. So this is standing on a tripod, embracing the current developments as much as available to you, thinking out of the box to adopt better approaches, and then embarking on it. That's what makes us teachers. And going further with my preamble, which we will all begin to think through, will be, we all recognize the fact, and I want you to agree with me, that this psychosocial concept for effective learning has been highly neglected in African educational setting. That is the first thing, accepting the fact, regardless of how we feel. Remember that I told you I'm going to give this lecture based on three things. One is perceived reality, the way I say it. Two is objective reality, the fact, regardless of who we are. And then experiential reality, what I have witnessed in both clients. Number two, whenever you work with students, either in a class or in the lab, you are teaching. But my beloved teachers, professors and lecturers, it goes beyond teaching. Any day you step into the class, you are shaping the society, either for good or bad, through your conduct as a teacher. Don't forget, we are teaching young minds. And I love a quote said by Lenin and posted in a WhatsApp group by our amiable Ochendo, that is Dr. Charles Ibe. He said that if the society teaches the youths to be corrupt, their mind will definitely be corrupt. If the society teaches the youths to show empathy and compassion, they will definitely show empathy and compassion. And I can tell you for free, I have been in Africa up to 40 years before I left, and we are still grappling with the culture of hostility. And no wonder why things are still hostile in all segments, including universities and professor-student relationship. On this side of the climb, the law takes absolute authority, regardless of who is who. So that extent, compassion becomes a default. Empathy becomes a default, because the law indirectly requires you to do that. So you just have to do that, even when you don't go to church or when you don't go to mosque. So in the educational setting, that becomes a norm, and the students see the professors from day one as being empathetic and compassionate. And what do? They learn it, they carry it to the society, and by default, that becomes their nature. And they run their life on a daily basis with that. Don't get me wrong, there are good ones, there are still bad ones all over the world, but still, it becomes engraved. It would have been engraved in their formative stage, and they grow it out. So we ought to recognize that in the educational setting as we teach these children. Teaching skillfully and ethically is both a choice and a responsibility. So we are going to be looking at the ethics of teaching. It's not just about being the most brilliant professor, but are you imbibing the principles of teaching ethics in the laboratory and in the classroom? You can teach well if you want, and you can teach poorly if you want. But I can tell you that teaching well is more fun than teaching poorly. And when I talk about teaching well and teaching poorly, I'm talking about the content of the course, the morality behind in the teaching, the behavior of the professor, and also strict adherence to teaching ethics. Investment of time and attention to developing skills in teaching is worthwhile. Therefore, this time we are spending looking at ways of improving the psychosocial environment in our schools is not a wasted time. We are learning something that will help us as individuals improve that social space, which is critical to learning and improvement of human quality. My preamble continues. One of the best aspects of teaching is that when we teach, we appreciate that we are also learners. So the teaching environment that we constitute ourselves as potentially the persons in charge, we should also leave a window in our hearts to realize that we are learners. Therefore, we have something to learn from the students if we make ourselves available for that, rather than thinking that it's all about us in the classroom or in the university environment. Most importantly, we live in a world driven by the greatest youths, who we call the millennials. This set class of people are technologically driven, they are morally vulnerable, and technologically competent. So we need to be careful with them and align ourselves with the current trends of technology in order to adapt to their level or to their disposition, so that we can have that kind of synergy for effective learning. Lastly, to my preamble, I want to say that teaching can be fun if we make it so. So it's your responsibility at the end of this class, at the end of this discussion, we would have known how we can create a psychosocial environment in this university that not only benefits the students, but benefits all stakeholders: the teacher, the students, the administrators, the parents, and the community. So let us continue with this last preamble. Teachers should recognize that the course they teach is highly influenced by the college culture. So when we enter the classroom, it's not just about the content of that course. The ability of the students to understand what we are passing to them is also influenced by the culture of the university, knowingly or unknowingly. Because the policies around teaching, the policies around the school will determine what the student takes, how the student takes, how the teacher teaches, and what the teacher takes in. We'll talk about it later. Number two, teachers should also recognize and circumvent the pitfalls of the institution. So it is not just enough for us to stick to the programs of the school without really questioning some of the pitfalls and also addressing them timely. Teachers should value adopting new teaching methodology. I just mentioned about the millennials. We should be looking at that. We shouldn't be static. There are several forms of teaching: vertical learning, horizontal learning, pedagogical teaching, and all of that, problem-based learning, and all of that. You know, thank God for AI. These are all evolution. These are all coming. So a teacher should be very, very ready to embrace new techniques and then introduce it gradually to the students as time unfolds. Most importantly, teachers should be aware of the existing subcultures in the class. Subcultures of within the university, subcultures within the faculty, subcultures within the class. This will also affect the pattern and quality and style of communication between the teacher and student, and also in problem solving. The way you solve the problem of an American is not the way you solve the emotional problems of a Hispanic, or it's not the same way you solve the emotional problem of the Asian, or the same way you solve the problem of the Africans. So the psychology of a student is closely tied to his or her cultural backgrounds. A teacher should recognize this and deal with it, or rather work with it. Within the student culture, there are important individual differences among students. I've just mentioned that. Then student and students and the student, very important. Note that the students and the student must be heard, protected, motivated, and understood. That's why I had to put it, the students, however it applies to the collective, and then the student, you deal with it at the individual level. Again, I have highlighted the next preamble. What is important is not just learning. What is important is learning and not just teaching. So you may be teaching a topic, but you are creating a learning environment. And the components of learning are multifaceted. So this learning equips this child or this student for effective functionality in the outside society. So as a teacher standing before the students, you recognize this fact. You bring in morality, you bring in compassion, you bring in empathy, you bring in good communication, you bring in professionalism, you bring in transparency, you bring in responsibility, accountability, and integrity, while still dishing out the content of your course. And not just in the class, but day-to-day life or relationship with the students. So let us know that teaching is not, we are not in the school just to be in the class to teach the course content. We are in the school to make the students to learn. Next, increasing the students' motivation and ability to continue learning after leaving college. This is very important. We need to create an atmosphere that creates enthusiasm and optimism for the students to get out to the society and be enthusiastic to continue to contribute to society. In the end, reflection is the key. At the end of the day, an environment that allows everybody to ask questions. How far have I gone? Who am I? What have I contributed? What are the challenges that I've encountered? What have I done right? What have I done not right? Where do I need to improve on the side of the teacher and the students needs to be done? So what is this topic all about? This topic is simply all about where mental health meets social context in universities and colleges. This lecture is going to focus on how the social conditions and human relationships in colleges and universities affect learning, both in classroom and in the research laboratory. So it hopes to explore the multifaceted nature of the psychosocial environment and its critical role in fostering effective learning and research. On a broader perspective, psychosocial environment refers to the amalgamation of psychological and social conditions that influence individuals' experiences and behaviors within educational and research settings. It can be defined also as the social conditions and relationships that affect a person's psychological well-being. So the emphasis here is in educational setting. Have we recognized that creating a conducive psychological environment is necessary? The answer is yes. Going further, we can also say that it cannot be overstated or overemphasized. There is a strong interplay between psychological and social factors in shaping the educational experiences and outcomes. So, in looking at it, what are the components of this psychosocial environment? What are the components? 1, the emotional climate. 2, the social relationship. 3, the cultural norms. 4, the institutional policies. 5, motivations. And 6, mental health. The good thing about this is that all the 5 have impact on the personality of the individual, and to a large extent affects the mental health, which is the core of the psychological component of psychosocial concept. Then the social aspect of it, which has to do with human relations, interactions with the environment, are also involved. So when we combine these two, the social relationship and mental health, we'll begin to look at how each of these impact them and how both of them impact the learning abilities of the student. Here comes culture and communication. So cultural diversities of the students becomes the first. When these students leave home, they are coming from different cultural backgrounds. And we as teachers, we are supposed to be the buffers. When they come in, if we have the right knowledge about psychosocial environment and how it can impact a student, especially on the mental health, we will position ourselves as buffers, communicate in the right manner while recognizing the cultural diversities. So along these cultural diversities, there are stressors which we as teachers, we need to motivate them along that line. Some of these diversities will be what I called, or what I read up as, the imposter syndrome. Here, you are looking at a student that self-doubts himself or herself. He has just, some of them move from, for example, myself, let me use myself as an example. I went to a technical college in one remote village. While in my class, I had some persons that came from government federal colleges. So when we discuss that kind of feeling that am I really fit in this environment comes in. But to the glory of God, as you may have heard, we cracked the code and became the best. And we are still pushing. So we need to recognize this as teachers. Some of these students have self-doubt from day one. If we don't recognize that and we place all of them at the same pedestal, jump into the classroom, dish out the notes and get out, we probably will have these students left out. And like I said in the next slide, in the incoming slide, inclusivity is very important. But before we get to that point, we needed to understand these diversities. The other one is what is called first generation conditions. Some of them are first in their families to attend high school, to attend universities and colleges. So they are coming with that fear. Am I really going to represent my family well? So that becomes a cultural disadvantage or a cultural stress. And then the other one is acculturation anxiety. This is stress due to the adaptation to a new culture. I have had so many of my students coming from the US or Canada, coming to the Caribbean, Cayman Islands, where I'm domiciled currently. The Caribbean style and culture is quite different from that of the US and Canada. So they find it difficult to readjust, and they do poorly during the first semester. But we have recognized that fact. We've dealt with it over the years, and then we are having good records. And then I'm bringing it to us. We probably have to learn from that. So the other aspects that we need to talk about is stress-induced psychological problems in students. These things happen unnoticed. Some of them, or this stress, which are latent, are exhumed suddenly, and we see students behaving in certain ways. If teachers and administrators are not aware of the need to create a conducive psychosocial environment, our students will always come down with psychological problems, and that will affect their learning. So I have listed some of the stress-induced psychological problems, ranging from belligerence to moodiness to excessive worry, suspiciousness, helplessness, emotional outbursts, depression, and symptoms of drug or alcohol abuse. These are basically the problems they manifest, and we hold it against them. Unfortunately, we don't even pay attention in our part of the world. At most, we label the students, we stigmatize the students, either by their friends or even the administration. No support system. We are coming to that grade. We are coming to that point. So how do we deal with psychological problems? How do we deal with it? There are multifaceted ways of dealing with it, ranging, but let me just chronicle it the way I have put it so that it will be, we can move faster. First of all is to recognize it. Recognize that there is increasing frequency and of psychological problems. When we do, we would have woken up to the challenges. Get the students to talk to you. But first of all, before you can have that happen, you would have built confidence. The students should have built confidence in you, which would have been a product of your past relationship with that student. Let me mention it quickly here before it escapes my memory. There are situations where you see hear professors tell students, "Get out of my office." Who does that in a sane society? Nobody gets an A in my course for the first time. That is a silent threat. Who does that? So there are certain things we do that we think when we get away with it and we think is normal, but we are basically reducing the self-esteem of a student or damaging the confidence of a student. And yet we say we are teachers. So we should allow that confidence to be there. Before they should build confidence before they can come to us. You should listen to the students rather than intervening immediately. When we try and find out, most times our intervention is punitive or stigmatization instead of listening and providing the necessary support. Then let the students suggest possible actionable options available to them, him or her. Sometimes these students are not dumb. They know better what led to their situation. First of all, ask the student, how do you think I can be of help? What do you think are the possible factors that has precipitated this condition? And you talk, and you talk, and you keep talking, and you keep listening. But this would be if the right atmosphere was provided in the first place. Show concern and empathy. Very important. There is what I call this issue of predatory teaching and predatory supervision. Some of us, I'm going to be mentioning certain things so that I don't forget it because of want of time. But at least we get the message. There is what we call predatory supervision. It is unethical for a professor to get married to his supervisee. It's highly unprofessional. It's highly unethical. Because you are basically doing what we call predatory. You have taken advantage. And if people know that these things do exist, they become scared. We have the issue of sex for grades. We have the issue of money for grades. We have the issue of politics for grades. This should not be. They have several forms of bullying, verbal abuse, unintended threats, damage to student self-esteem, and all of that. That is not empathy. That is not concern. That is not compassion. That does not help the what I call psychic balance. That does not help the psychic balance of the student. And of course, do not play the role of a counselor. And here brings me to the point, because I can be mentioning them randomly. The existence of university or faculty counselors is not negotiable in the current world where mental health is a concern. And let us know, mental health transcends the existence of mental illness. Somebody does not necessarily have to be mentally ill to have some mental deformities in terms of holistic mental health. So people go on with mental challenges that affect their capacity to perform, especially in the academic setting. So the role of counselors should be held very, very pivotal. If we can have school counselors, we have faculty counselors. This shouldn't be teachers, to avoid bias, so that they can be free to talk to the students, and students can be free to talk to them. If they are teachers, students may not open up. And then, as a professor, as a teacher with the students, as a researcher, as a supervisor, you have to follow up with your students and the counselor. How have you succeeded with the results? Is it working out? Have you seen your counselor? What's going on? And all of that. This is how to create the enabling psychosocial space. Are the teachers left alone? No. When we talk about the mental health of the students, we still have to talk about the mental health of the teachers. They need to be respected by students. Teachers need to be respected by the authorities. Teachers need to be respected by the parents and community. And then the welfare of the teachers, including their own mental health welfare, taking them on seminars, having allowances for their health checks, having good insurance, health insurance company, health insurance, making sure that their remunerations are paid rightly without having to argument and all of that. So these are all issues that have been neglected subtly, but they have done more damage than good and continues to do more damage. So what are the impacts? It is a known fact that students who feel supported emotionally and socially are more likely to demonstrate higher levels of engagement, motivation, and academic achievement. So prioritizing psychological well-being and social collaboration is not negotiable. On the other side, negative psychosocial conditions such as high stress, poor interpersonal relations can lead to decreased motivation, low academic performance, and hinder research productivity. So now, what are the key psychosocial environments? 1, social interaction, recognizing and embracing diversities, inclusive and equitable learning, recognizing the issue of mental health, supporting emotional climate, imbibing the principle of teaching with integrity and motivation. So let's deal with them one after the other quickly. When we talk about the social space, we are looking at peer relationship. We are looking at teacher-student interaction. We are looking at building a collaborative learning community. The students keep their friends. Sometimes, when we talk about this is my academic advisor, what really do you advise? It has to be holistic. You have to ask too many questions, academic, non-academic questions, provided you don't budge into personal privacies that have not been divulged to you. Teacher-student interaction, very important. We've mentioned that there should be that confidence. Then a collaborative learning community, the university should evolve ways of bringing the administrators, students, teachers together Having a potluck is not a big deal. It can be at the faculty level. Having a common restaurant for lecturers and students is not a big deal. Allowing the student to see that they are coming out to be like you. So make them feel comfortable being like you. Don't make them feel it. Don't make yourself a lord and a god before the student, so that he feels so you feel scared of you. You are building somebody to be better than you in society. So why don't come close as early as possible? So implementation of intentional strategies aimed at enhancing students' emotional well-being is very important. Adopting practices that promote empathy, understanding, and open communication, critical. Activities that encourage self-reflection, such as journaling or group discussion, should be part of the social interaction. Creating safe spaces within the classroom where students feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and emotions. So sometimes you can ask your student, what do you feel about this topic? What do you feel about me? What do you feel about this course? How can I improve? Give them that space to talk to you, to know that we are here as a family to work together. So motivation is a key driver of academic success, and a supportive emotional climate plays a fundamental role in fostering this motivation. When students feel emotionally secure, they are more inclined to take ownership of their learning. They set ambitious goals and persevere in the face of challenges. Intrinsic motivation is where they tell themselves, oh, I am going to do it. I am encouraged to do it. We also have what we call extrinsic motivation. This is where they look up to the wall and say, hey, I want to be like this person. Why don't you be one person that can provide that extrinsic motivation as a teacher? Engagement closely linked to motivation is enhanced in a supportive emotional environment. Engagement is the key. Engaged learners are more likely to participate actively in discussions, collaborate with peers, and seek out additional resources to deepen their understanding. Educators can create engaging learning experience by incorporating diverse teaching methods, project-based learning, experiential activities, and technology integration. This has to be provided only when there is that understanding, that communal relationship, that harmony between teachers and students. They can easily come to you with their laptops, open their laptops, have their drawings shown to you. This is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing. What do you feel? They can have access to your emails. They can send you emails often and on, provided it is not private and it doesn't is professional. The language is professional. But let them not have access to you. So this approach is not only captivate student interest, but also foster a sense of community and connection among learners. In today's educational landscape, it is imperative to acknowledge and address mental health issues that may hinder students' academic performance and emotional well-being. The increasing prevalence of anxiety, depression, and stress among students underscores the need for proactive measures within educational institutions. So, I am going to give us a rundown of data collected from various universities in Africa and to show us what the trend is quickly. If you look at here, you are looking at perceived stress. I have these ones are tiny, but in Nigeria, about 20 to 40% suffer depression. 20 to 40% of Nigerian university students. Anxiety, 25 to 50%. Psychological stress, 30 to 50%. Let's look at Ghana. We are looking at 22% due to poor planning. 90% are suicidal, and 22% have attempted suicide. 22% are still, 23% attempted suicide. 22% are still planning to do that, while 19% are already suicidal. In Kenya, moderate depression 37 to 37%, 35 to 37%, severe depression, 5 to 6%, mental distress, 33 to 35%. South Africa, the same trend, 28 to 28.9 met the criteria for common mental disorder. While in same South Africa, several universities put together, especially Eastern Cape, you have psychological distress representing those who have that 53.3%. So this goes on to show us that this is very significant statistically. The mental health issues among our students in Africa is very, very clear and very common, very prevalent. So there's a need to address it urgently. What are these risk factors? Academic pressure. Our time wouldn't allow me to address this academic pressure because we have neglected a lot about the welfare of the students. We think that we are the boss and they are the subordinates. But I can tell you the real deal, especially when you have private universities, the opposite is the case. They are the boss. We are just servants as teachers. And even in public schools, if we really understand the morality behind teaching, we will also understand that even in public schools, they are the boss. Therefore, we need to do things differently to place them in the right pedestal where they belong, so that they can have good mental balance to learn, rather than the other way where they feel threatened, they feel bullied in several ways. I'm going to show you shortly. Academic pressure is one. I'm going to tell you how that is alleviated. Financial hardship, poor social support, sleep deprivation, substance abuse. Sometimes this substance abuse, they embark on it just as a coping mechanism. So invariably, the system pushed them into that scenario. Family and relationship problems, food insecurity. This is where I discussed under economic status. Mental health stigma. Some of them keep quiet. They can't even talk about it because they know they will be stigmatized, either by their peers or by the system or even their lecturers. So the percentage, the data continues to go on, and I don't want to waste our time with that data. So let's move on. So what are the implications for universities? The implication for universities is that there should be routine mental health screening for students, expansion of university counseling services, peer support and mentorship programs, mental health awareness campaigns should be adopted right in the university to reduce stigma. Early intervention is the key. How can you intervene if you are not very attentive to the welfare of your students? How can you? Then policies that integrate mental health promotions in the universities must be put in place. Again, we'll talk about it in recommendations. So how do we address mental health issues in academic settings? We have to prioritize it first. All the mental health resources has to be prioritized. We have to promote the culture of openness regarding mental health. We have to normalize discussions about it. We have to integrate mental wellness topics into the curriculum, at least at the very inception of their program, so that they know that they are welcomed in a system that recognizes their mental well-being. They are equipped with the right knowledge to address it, to avoid it, and to mitigate it on all fronts. Collaborating with mental health professionals is very important. So by this, schools can periodically host seminars, either at the faculty level or at the school level for students and teachers and lecturers. I'm not going to waste time on this. What I call inclusive and equitable learning. Students should not be segregated. Students should not be favored in terms of not recognizing different learning abilities. I'm going to summarize this. It's about 4 slides or 5. But this has to do with what? Recognizing the disparities in learning abilities among the students in class. And therefore, the professor is now supposed to evolve mechanism, recognize, diagnose, and adopt mechanisms that will carry all the students along. How you do that, I will tell you later, shortly. So diversities happen along different lines: race, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, language, ability, gender. Let me just talk about economic status a bit, which I'm going to summarize as well. But what he's talking about here, you might think that a student is not intelligent, but this student is just battling with how to feed. I'm not saying you're going to give the student money. No. But the space to discuss this can come in. And then as policy makers, there are things that can be done. Is in my recommendation. And let me just say that quickly. That's what we call teacher assistant. A teacher assistant is somebody who helps the teacher. And most times, indigent students who feel they are intelligent or they can do it, go and take up that job. It's a paid job. The school pays them. And not only that, the school also constitutes a kind of board that seek external funds for indigent students. It can be abused, but let it be in system first. As researchers, we will always research better ways of managing it. But the fact that it is not in existence is an anomaly. So along these other lines are the diversities. So that's what I mean. So basically, how do you include? How do you create an inclusive teaching practice? Inclusive teaching practice, teaching has to be inclusive. That cater for what? The diverse needs of the students. Differentiating, instructing, employing various teaching methods, and providing multiple means of engagement to accommodate different learning styles and abilities. This is left to you. You just have to recognize that all fingers are not equal in that class. This might demand, one might say it demands additional, am I paid enough for this? Well, you may not be paid enough for that, but the system, if it should operate rightly, requires that we get it right. Again, who knows? If we get it right and the policymakers are seeing that this thing demand budgetary allocations for, it should be made, at least in a sane climate. But how long shall we remain insane? I'm not saying we are insane. I'm just using that term. But we must have to move from where we are to where we should be. So feedbacks, flexible assessment options, very important in a class setting. Sometimes you don't want to give your students the impression that they cannot, that things are, that the course is not easy. Sometimes you can just give them bonuses. You can just provide some kind of things that make them feel that this is not a do or die affair. It is something that we can navigate through our professor. Let them have that feeling. I will tell you how it's done. Feedback is important. You don't just sit back, go to the classroom, pour the lectures, and wait for the exams. Every day you go. No, sometimes sit back, ask them questions. Anonymous, they should write anonymous reports. That's what we call course and professor evaluation. That is where it comes in. So any existing potential bias and stereotypes must be addressed by the professor or the school policy. So let me also talk about students should feel valued and respected. This is very important. It's very, very important. It baffles me when somebody says that he paid his lecturer either for one or this or that, or when students or lecturers demand something as a reward for grades is insane. The students should be valued, they should be respected. And of course, there's what I call open door reporting system. It should be created so that teachers and researchers can be, there should be a protective mechanism of reporting those that act unprofessionally while protecting the right and integrity of the student. Then the last in this series will be the socioeconomic status. I've mentioned that when I highlighted the components. The socioeconomic status is very important. Students are not equally financially in terms of their financial strength. So this again limits their performances and potentials. It limits, it creates a lack of support. And then it limits their ability to understand, learn, and cope with the prevailing situation in school. So that again does not give them a level playing ground. I remember those days when some students would be in class learning. I probably would be looking for money elsewhere, what I'm going to get from the village and sell and make and be able to stay in school. So these are factors we should recognize as professors, and not just sit back there, or even not as professors, but as policymakers, and recognize that it exists. A student cannot just function when the mental health is not complete. I'm not saying we are going to be 100% responsible, but we do our bit as much as we can. So sometimes it may be necessary to partner with the communities. This is again where one way of solving the economic problem. Sometimes the faculty can institute what we call crowdfunding for students. These students cannot go out there to start begging for money, but a faculty can institute crowdfunding. Alumni association can just throw money in that kind of fund for the faculty, and students can have access to it. The faculty or the school or the whatever, depending on the scope, can manage these funds, give it. After all, in the US, they give students loans. You can borrow as much as you want. When you finish school, you start paying. Why do you think they do that? To sanitize the mental state of these students as they go to school. Yes, our government have started it, but I don't know how implementable it is. Not just Nigeria, but the entire Africa. So if the government is doing that, fine. If they are not, the school or the faculty can look inwards. It's all about learning. It's all about making students that will run the society. So it goes beyond passing the course. So if we build them well, we build a better society. So having said that, let us quickly go through the summary of what we have said, and then we will be able to look at the recommendations, and then I will say ask one or two questions and invite your questions as well. So the summary will be that the significance of a well-established psychosocial environment in education and research cannot be overemphasized. We have also explored how components of the psychosocial framework, the social interactions, the emotional climates, the inclusivity, and the economic status, how they shape the psychosocial environment and effective learning of the student. We should recognize that education is not merely the transition of knowledge. It is a complex interplay of emotional, social, and cognitive factors that collectively influence learner engagement and achievement. Positive peer relationship and constructive teacher-student dynamics are essential in cultivating a collaborative learning community, enhancing academic performance and the holistic development of individuals. Creating a supportive emotional climate where strategies promote emotional well-being can significantly impact motivation and engagement. Addressing mental health issues within academic setting is a critical factor in ensuring that learners feel valued and capable, facilitating an environment conducive for exploration and inquiry. A conducive psychosocial environment. Okay, no, where are we now? No, this is where we should be. So we have also discussed inclusive and equitable learning. It's important that all the students in class should be carried along, if I may just reduce it to that. By implementing inclusive teaching practices and addressing disparities related to socio-economic status, educators can create opportunities for all learners to thrive, thereby enriching the educational landscape. A conducive psychosocial environment is foundational to achieving effective learning and research. We can't run away from this, both on the side of the students and on the teacher. This requires concerted effort of educators, administrators, and researchers to prioritize and integrate psychosocial factors into their pedagogical strategies. We must recognize and harness the power of these elements to create environments that enhance academic success and nurture well-rounded individuals equipped to contribute meaningfully to society. Then my recommendations. A call to action. What do we have to do? This might bring closer or what I have been saying. It will reduce it to very simple terms. One, I call upon educators and researchers alike in Africa to advocate for and implement practices that promote a supportive psychosocial environment, ensuring that all learners can reach their fullest potential. As educators, let us commit to fostering atmospheres that not only educate but also empower, creating a brighter future for generations to come. And here comes the specifics. There is great need for policymakers, vice chancellors, ministers of education to see the need for the establishment of Center for Student Welfare and Mental Health Support in universities and faculties. Maybe I should say Center for Student Stroke Teacher Welfare and Mental Health Support. Very, very important. An example of this is to appoint independent counselors in faculties or in universities. Now let me talk about mandatory quiz and exam reviews. This is very important. You see, in our part of the world, students may never have access to review their quizzes and exams. It is expected that at the end of every quiz, in order to reduce academic stress, which constitutes a greater percentage of the psycho imbalance or psychological stress to students, they need to, if a student has done an exam, you release the exam, release the result, you are supposed to create the window for the students to come back to you and review that quiz or that exam. In that review, the student should be able to know why he failed a particular number. What did I do not right to be able to fail this number? To fail this question, sorry. What did I do? Sometimes it might need arguments. This is a world of internet. The students can Google that concept, and then some arguments can be made around it. Remember that you are also a learner. I enjoy this aspect so much, to the extent that I can defend every aspect of physiology from now till tomorrow, courtesy of my students, from the challenges they've given me for the past 10 years, and I have improved significantly. So I call us to embrace this. You can't keep students in the dark about their quest for knowledge. To the extent that in my culture, and I don't know whether it has changed, if a student calls for a remark of his paper, it becomes a problem. It shouldn't be. That should be one of the easiest things that should be done. He shouldn't call for a panel. He has the exam, he has paid his school fees, give him back, let him look at it again. It's very simple. That creates a good psychological balance for the students. Students should have access to practice questions and self-assessment questions before the exam. It doesn't remove anything from you as a professor. If after teaching renal physiology, I know I'm going to give you 10 questions in the exam, I can just give you 2 practice questions that will cut across the entire course and say, go and practice these questions. Whether I will repeat them in the exam or not is my business, not your business. But the intention is that you have holistic learning under a balanced psychosocial space. And as I'm giving to you, I'm smiling. So you know that we are doing this, we are in this business together. Then you can do a self-assessment questions as well. This self-assessment question can be as broad as you want it. Give it to them either before the lecture or after the lecture. Let them be doing something that mimics what the exam is going to be. No teacher wants his students to fail, his or her student. All you want is for them to do well. Therefore, you have to provide the enabling psychosocial space. Next is student evaluation of courses and lecturers. This is very important. In some universities, your promotion is tied to what the student says about you, what the student says about the course, in terms of the course content, in terms of your syllabus, in terms of your course objectives. In those days, going in the university, I knew some professors used to give us the course outline before ever the lecture starts. Whether it is still being done or enforced, I don't know. But I am saying you don't need any authority to tell. It is your responsibility as a good teacher. You are providing a good psychosocial space for your students and yourself as well. So again, we have this last one. Just give me 1 minute to finish. There is what we call accommodation of students. Students do not have the same learning ability. Again, that is the inclusiveness I'm talking about. There are some students who have different types of learning disabilities, dyslexia, and the rest of them. So when you administer exams, students with some learning disabilities that have been diagnosed by a doctor should be given extra time. They should be given extra time. That is inclusiveness. So you don't just assume that all students are on the same pedestal. No. Policymakers should understand this. I have talked about email access. This is a world of, technology is advancing. Internet is almost all over the world. Students should be able to send you emails, ask you questions via emails, and you should be free and happy to answer them. I've talked about teacher assistance. Then mentoring is very important. And everything I have said today is all about mentoring. So we should be able to recognize that. Then establishments of student clubs. This is part of where the students can interface with the public. It is part of their social interaction, both for students and professors. I've talked about potlucks. I've talked about having the same restaurant in one place. So students can be encouraged to interact closer with their students. Sometimes you have, set up clubs where students can participate, lecturers can participate, or even students alone. And sometimes the funding of these clubs can come from the outside. This makes the university environment very socially viable, lucrative, and it takes up the students from some of these clandestine activities. And I can tell you that this issue of cultism and all manner of things that happen they take it as coping mechanisms to avoid some form of mental health challenges. So we should be coming closer to the students on various levels. Then I talked about, I've highlighted this before, open reporting system. The professor gave unprofessional conduct by all stakeholders will be appropriately reported without consequences. Students should be meant to know that. Finally, there should be formulation and strict enforcement of policies that protect the rights of students and lecturers. So at this point, I want to say thank you so much for listening. And I hope that we should have a good actionable plan at the end of this seminar, this lecture. That actionable plan will be What will you do better? Having listened to this lecture as a teacher, as a parent, as a policymaker, what is your action plan? What is it that you are doing now as a teacher that you want to do differently? Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much once again, Professor Aka, for this insightful lecture. It's really very well delivered, and it may look strange in most of our territory, but we know that this is the standard globally. This is a global standard, and we really need to inculcate it into our environment if we want to grow as academia in most part of the sub-Saharan Africa. We cannot wish it away, because these are things that you may think they are not important. Indeed, in most cases, as you said, the lecturer or the lecturing community versus the student, they just see them as, okay, these are the bosses and these are the alternative. But that is not how it's supposed to be. We've had a number of severe cases in the university where you see students they just blow up mentally, or they can't cope again. And well, you say, what's the problem? What is she or is he the only one? Why is he breaking down? You don't know what these students are going through individually and collectively. So it's difficult for you to be able to decide this. And then I picked a number of issues based on what you've said. I know you've delivered a whole lot of things, and I'm sure that we will all need to think rudimentarily on it before we can even comprehend the volume of what had been delivered. You talk about cultural diversity and stressors. Definitely. We even know that, especially in this part of the world, pressures even from parents. You are going to school, they say, oh, you must be the best. I expect this from you. You are the first in the family and all those things. These are stressors. The first generation condition, you mentioned it. The acculturation, especially when people are transiting between one system or one socio-cultural environment to another one. It put a lot of pressure on them. And the pressure also includes the pressure of finance. For example, you move suddenly from Nigeria, for instance, to America. The first thing that comes to your head is not, how am I going to succeed? The first thing that comes to your mind is, how am I going to cope? Even if my family, my father, my mother sells, put all their salary together and sell things, can we still cope in terms of the payment? So those are the things that come quickly to you. You talk about teachers respecting the student, and students also respecting the teachers back. This is very vital for our environment too. We definitely need that. Indeed, in recent time, we had some engagement on the AfriScience Forum, and this issue came up. And we have quite a lot of opinion on it. So thank you very much for emphasizing that. I will cut it short, but finally, you mentioned the issue of routine mental health screening. Unfortunately, in this part of the world, when you tell somebody to go do mental health screening, the first thing they think is, do you think I'm mad? So definitely, when you are told to go for mental health, it's not because you are mad, but you really need to do this thing to know your condition, to be able to get the right set of assistance. And this is standard practice abroad. It's standard practice. And so if we really want to improve our system, these are some of the things that we really need to think of, and to think of how to incorporate them in our environment. And most importantly, you mentioned the issue of different learning ability. You know, I used to be a professor in South Africa, and then at one time, we carried out an experiment. You know that due to the apartheid era system, there are different type of learning environments, the A learning and the B learning and the C learning environment. And then we found out students from the rural area, they were always falling behind in terms of academic competence. Then we thought of it, what can we do differently? We introduced different type of assessment. And by the end of that course, you know, the first group and the second group in that class happened to be students from this rural area. And it becomes very enlightening and eye-opening to the university system. So as lecturers, as academia, as postgraduate students on this platform, what Professor Aka is telling us is that we need to continually innovate our systems. and think of how to make it better every time. Don't always sit in one position, be very dynamic with how you look at issues. And I hope that this particular material will definitely make it available, will be our reference point when we are thinking of how to improve our system. I would like to open the floor for questions. And if you have questions, you can raise your hand, please. Then Professor Pilau, please.
Okay. I just hope you can hear me. Thanks so much, Professor Aka. I know Professor Aka. We worked with him for years. He's a prolific writer and thorough academic. Now, Prof talked so much, and the scope handles the whole of Africa. Is an entire thing downloaded. I was just wondering, how does the West, given his vast experience, both the Nigerian and then the Western world, how does the West compare to Nigeria for academics? Self-awareness, discipline, and knowledge alone. Is it okay with deficits of socio-economic inputs, especially given Nigeria, where lecturers are poorly paid, their working environment is so dilapidated, everything is at deficits? Can attempt to, just self-awareness and the attempt to be the best, is that alone to give students the best? How does Nigerian situation compare with that abroad? Because I see the problem as if it's a policy problem from the government. That is one question. Then the little bit of contribution I want to make, he talked about guidance and counseling. The present guidance and counseling we are operating in university is grossly inadequate. It's just shambolic. It does not deliver on the objectives. It's just barely a room with just a single guidance and one counselor who is poorly trained, who does not continually, go for refresher courses, and then is handling the entire university. And then there is zero resources available for academics in terms of mental health evaluation, mental health support. Thank God in his recommendation, he talked about a center for, center of welfare and support for both staff and students. Presently, the university system just don't operate that. Staffs are really stressed, and almost every academic in Nigeria has some level of mental depression. There is no support system, there is nothing. So these deficits we are operating in our staff is the one translating on the students. Sometimes that's the way I see these things. Thank you so much. Just to make it brief.
Thank you, Professor Pilau. Dr. Omanua, please.
My question here, our facilitator, our speaker said in the Western world that there's nothing wrong giving the student study question, that if you like or whether or not, if it's left for you to also pick some of the question and bring in the exam or test. Over here, that practice has been swept under the floor. The boss thing, like he said, loading question on student or being the boss in some of the issue make the student to be scared away from the lecturers. I remember then in UNN when I was under the tutelage of Professor Aka, then Dr. Aka, we hardly come close to him. But now I see a different scenario here, that is even the one educating us how he used to be, how he's supposed to be. So I really appreciate him for that. And I want to ask a general question here, that if one start to a kind of practice that kind of Western education here, would the University Commission said we are going below standard, or how should we go about it? That's my question.
Dr. Ezeugo Chukode, please. Over.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Aka, for this wonderful lecture. It's indeed very impactful, and I really appreciate. My question is, recently, during some of my lecture, it has been a recent occurrence that some students in the class usually look distracted, and you observe that some of the students are not really interested in what they are teaching, no matter how hard you try to make it inclusive, distracted, or whatever reason. And then, so how can you handle that? And secondly, how can you, in a class, there are always some students that lag behind. Their understanding is not as the others, and usually even when you set the same question in the CA and set it in the exam, you still see them failing. So how can you bring those students that have that don't grab things easily? How can the learning process can be uniform? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me start with the first question. You see, the problem is the type of society we create. If you look at what is going on, let us use Nigeria as a case study. If you look at Nigeria and look at how the youths behave, we will see clearly that it is this: everybody wants to be the boss. Everybody is inclined to show off power. Everybody is inclined to being authoritative or using their valuable power, no matter how small, to show you that I can, play the Lord or play some forces against you. So, where is this coming from? Especially in the privileged space. In the privileged space, it's all about graduates, university graduates. If you look at the politicians, they might be doing what they are doing, but most of them are graduates. Almost 90% of Nigerian politicians are graduates. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the personality of the policy makers is defective. And this defective attribute is as a result of the nurture that they received from the highest hierarchy of their academic training, which is what? The university. The university is the last point that pushes them to the outside world. And I can assure you that over the years, the prevailing social environment in Nigerian university is what? Toxic. It's toxic. It's charged. Is filled with this kind of tension. No compassion, no empathy. People are not taught the principle of empathy, the principle of good value system, the principle of good world view. So they are the type of mold that they received, or how they were molded before being pushed to the society, creates a type of personality that is competitive, abusive, antagonistic, and all of that. So again, it falls back to government. The self-awareness that we are talking about here, the strength, the weakness that we are talking about, picking you up. So it's all about what? The government has not put up enabling policy. The government of Africa, using Nigeria as example, over the years has failed. Let me put it that way. And if we don't address these issues, if lectures of this kind is not promoted in the universities, we will be heading to a catastrophic end in terms of the type of human beings we build we push out to society. Where, as I've said in the lecture, it's not just about teaching, it's about learning. And this learning is all about who you become. So the enabling environment, the right remuneration, respect for lecturers on all fronts should be in place. So it is a policy problem. It is the way the country has designed itself. Having said that, let me talk about here. One, there is respect for professionalism. You can be taken up just by talking to somebody using the wrong language, using the wrong words, even using the wrong gesture. That can be a problem for you. So you are naturally compelled to be human by the settings of the system. You are naturally compelled to be human. Even when you don't like somebody, you just have to shake your face, smile to the person. At that moment, regardless of what is going inside of you about that person, you have shown that person love. That is the humanity in us. And what this humanity is us is about what? Setting our mental picture correct, keeping us in the best psychic state to function as a human being. So the challenge, academics is not something that, of course, we know that is the only career that involves the sanity of the brain to start with. So it is if there is any environment that requires psychic balance, it is the university environment. So it's a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call to go for government to ensure that there is adequate that is what there is a safe psychosocial environment in the university, and that has to do with welfare of the teacher, of the professors. So they should not be looking at it. Let me just put it this way: this side of this world, they are not looking at your welfare, that they are doing you any good. They are looking at the society they want to create that will haunt them in tomorrow. That's exactly what's happening. We have created a country where people the psyche of people is not operating the way it should operate. We neglected it over time. What are we seeing today? So every sane country should realize that the type of mental psyche you create in human beings determines the type of society you have. So that being said, you find out that the government is not looking at your pay as if they are doing you any good. No, they want to take care of the professor or the teacher because they know that this teacher, the role of this teacher is critical to the type of youths they push out to the society. And the type of youth they push out to the society defines the sanity of the society, which is to the good of all. So they invest into the professor so that the professor will be first in a good mental state, recognizing the do's and don'ts, operating in the best professional space to teach the students what they should know. Basically, the best learning is the one that comes by observation. So when the students see that, and when we talk about these teachers, remember, it's not just about universities. It's high school, universities, institutes. So it's a government problem. And until the government of Africa begin to see that a good society is created by the quality of human beings operating within the space, and the quality of human beings operating within that space is a function of the type of psychic disposition. And psychic disposition is a matter of learning environment to which we have been exposed over a long time. Let me repeat this quote. If you want to destroy a nation, destroy the thinking of its youths. So we can also say that when the youths do not receive or do not, if the learning of youths is not in the best psychosocial environment, then their type of thinking will become defective. And once it becomes defective, is a window for creating a defective society. So government should not see the welfare of professors as if they are doing them any good. By paying them well, they will go and buy cars, they will go and build houses. That is no. So comparatively, the Western government sees that the welfare of the teachers directly relates to a balanced and sane society. That is my answer to that question. To the second question, the issue of the students being scared away by professors and the questions being watered or below standard if we adopt the review system, the self-assessment question, coming close to students and all of that. It is all about doing the right thing. Even in all religions, we are taught not to do what? To love ourselves, to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, and not to esteem ourselves higher than the other. Why wouldn't this be applicable in teaching and learning? I want to ask you, when you come to your house, you give birth to your children. When you come to your house, you remove your clothes. They see you the way you are, and then they learn better from you because you come to their level. I am not saying we should go to school and remove our clothes, but we should understand that we are once students. It is a matter of time that we became whatever we have become. Therefore, we should be good mentors. There are 4 things every professor should be to the student. You have to be the teacher. You have to be the counselor, unquote, unprofessional. You have to be the guidance, and you have to be the parents. Once you recognize these 4 roles as a teacher, you give the students access to you. And that student will feel better, feel respected, feel accommodated, feel welcome, and then can talk to you, can ask you questions. Sometimes you go outside academics and you can talk about other things that can improve the student's life. And at the end of the day, that students will be operating in a safe psychosocial space that will enable him to read and read happily, study happily, at least knock out some factors that can limit his learning ability. Then let's address the question. You see, questions, students are not meant to fail in the first place. As a matter of fact, on this side of the world, your retention with any university is largely dependent on your evaluation. If 50% of your class fails, even if they are all dumps, you have failed, and soon you will be fired. So that is in addition to their evaluation. At the end of every semester, they have to evaluate you. They have to say everything about you, including the jokes you cracked in the class. Some of them can say he cracks a lot of jokes. So you can imagine if they could go to that level, how much more would they go to your what? To your knowledge of the course, if you don't know it. So what am I trying to say here? Your intention is for them to learn. So you will be committed to their person. How do you do that? So it is left for you to work out how your students will fare excellently well in there. It's part of teaching. That is learning. You are not teaching that students to fail. That is why it baffles me when some professors will come and say, hey, nobody can have an A in my course. For real? Are you kidding me? Nobody has ever made A in my course. Or outrightly tell you you can't pass this course. How dare you do that? Okay, you come to classes when you like. Who does that? That's unprofessional. You can't do that. You can't stay in your bedroom or in the beer parlor and call your class rep and say, hey, I'm not coming to class today. You cancel lectures fixed on the schedule. Who does that? Without official permission? You can't do that. So there are lapses. And like I said somewhere, we know what to do as Africans. We are smart. We are smart people. Yes, I can tell you that. We are great. But we know where the world is going. We just chose, or we have chosen, to go the other way. Come and see what Nigerians are doing abroad. Smart people, great people. But we operate in an environment, in a social space that is toxic, that does not allow anybody to do anything. So my brother, there is nothing like lowering the standard. If you tell your students, we have finished this course. Come, write your questions based on your understanding of this course, and let's come and discuss your questions in class. You review you hypothetically create a scenario for an exam before an exam. Learning is still taking place. What is your aim? Your aim is for all of them to make 100% and pass. That's it. That's it. And if you give them that space, we will begin to see that these children are smart. It's just that we have put roadblocks that will make them not to get it right. And we claim that. In fact, sometimes some lecturers are happy when a greater number of their students fail their course. What a shame. So there's nothing there. If you have at the back of your mind that it is my responsibility to do everything for the students to pass, you do it before the exam. Nobody is saying, don't get me wrong, nobody is saying show them the exam questions. No, that is unacademic. But do everything you need to do so that they have proper understanding and internalization of the concepts of the course before the exam. In that way, you are creating a balanced psychosocial environment for them to operate. Then the last question says, being distracted in class and not interested, some of them are lagging. What do you do? Again, that has to do with the diversities. There are things we need to do. If we have a school counselor and then the exam officer, we learn every day anyway. The function of an exam officer is not just to collect results. You should track performance. Go and write it down. Tracking of performance. So my answer to Ezugu, if you are the one that asked that question, track the performance of your students. Identify their individual capacity. Make them your friend based on what you have learned today, and then help them on individual basis. You will see your class will be formed. So I recommend to faculties to set up spreadsheets that the exam officer can track performance. So at the end of every quiz, the professor should send to the central pool of the spreadsheet the score of the struggling students. With this, the faculty can keep track of the struggling students in a particular course. And then that's where the faculty counselor will come in. I'm talking about faculty counselor because I know in big schools, one counselor cannot handle the schools. So you just have to be faculty counselor. One counselor per faculty. Sometimes it can even get to two. The money is there. The politicians are stealing it. So track the records before the exam, over the semester, and then that's good. You will identify the weak ones. And based on what you have learned today, you will be able to adopt the appropriate strategy to help them. And that brings me to this issue of, what's it called? It's just leave my memory now. What's it called? I've forgotten about it. I don't want to mention it. Later I'll talk. I've forgotten. I can't remember it now. So that, yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Prof, for the response. Indeed, what you said is very apt. I can relate to that. We once had a student in the university. This student used to be a performer in the first and second year. Suddenly, we found out from the third year up to about halfway the third year, it was really falling behind. And then this issue of tracking performance that you mentioned was what actually picked that. And by the time they picked it, this was reported to the deputy dean in charge of learning, student learning. And the guy just suddenly saw the dean and the deputy dean visiting him in his room. And he was surprised. He was really flustered. He didn't know what happened. So they sat him down, and through the discussion, they found out that he was actually struggling with finance because he couldn't pay his fee, and he was from outside South Africa. You know, he was placed on scholarship from that third year until the final year with an agreement that when he started working, he would pay back the money. And he enjoyed the remaining part of his student life, finished, got a very good job. He was able to finish paying back. And then he decided to adopt another student and pay throughout the school year for the new student he adopted, who also come from a rural area. So what some of these things you are saying may look strange to us. They are not strange. These are supposed to be the norms. We know that our system have a lot of challenges that does not make it comfortable. Even most lecturers are struggling. And that is why bending backward to be able to even accommodate students when you yourself have not sit comfortably. That is why we do have this challenge. But I hope that this lecture had been stimulating enough and can really encourage us. I know I've seen a number of comments on the chat saying that they want to see this lecture being placed in the forum. Definitely, we have a YouTube channel. The whole lecture will be on the YouTube channel. You can listen to it again and again. At the same time, the lecture will be distributed on all our platforms. So you can pick the lecture, you can download it in any of the platform, and you'll be able to relate to this. And the essence of learning like this is not only for us to listen and keep it. You can get to your class. You can organize what they call like brown paper meeting, like a lunch hour meeting, where you sit your colleague down. You also replay this lecture to them if you cannot teach them, or you talk to them through what you've learned and then share this type of lecture with them. I believe it will help all of us. So I think there's still one more hand, but I don't know if the person is still willing to talk or had stopped now, because I can't see the hand again.
I can see Badamosi.
Badamosi, please proceed, Madam.
Okay, thank you, sir. I also join others to appreciate Prof. Thank you. I have just this comment on the presentation. There is need for us as lecturers to be intentional in the way we are relating with our students. I noticed that some of the recommendations given to Prof. I'm from University of Ibadan, and I'm in the Faculty of Education. I realized that at the University of Ibadan, we have some of these things in place, but it is centralized. There is this unit, counseling and career unit, and the head of the unit is the professor of guidance counseling. But having a center for the whole of the university is not enough. But if the centers are centralized, we have it from the various faculty, the students will have access. And when there is need for lecturers to refer them, they'll be able to go to the place. And there is this aspect of level coordinator too, that we are expected to mentor our students. But when a lecturer is assigned to about 70 students, it might not be effective. There will still be need also to look at that. Then the aspect of inclusive education. We have some professors that are there, but the university need to tap them. The university need to engage them. When they are well engaged, we will be student-centered and we're able to meet the needs of our learners. Counseling should not be during the orientation period alone. Counseling should be available for the student throughout their career, throughout their stay in the university. That is my own contribution to the presentation. That as a lecturer, there is need for us to be intentional. There is need for us to be learner-centered. And the university need to decentralize some of their engagements so that it will be more effective. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much for that wonderful observation, Badamosi. And you basically reflected on the realities. If you heard throughout the lecture, I was very careful with, or maybe I'm always reserved. I was always reserved. In each time I talk about counselors, I had always highlighted more of faculty counselor. You know, to be honest with you, we like building gigantic houses without content in Nigeria institutions. We are more interested in how big a building is, without looking inwards. Is this building really equipped to deliver the services? Of course, I'm not surprised. Contracts has to be given. Money has to be justified. I mean, swindling money away has to be justified one way or the other. So that is why. Why am I saying this? The school will always be interested in centralization. Why? Because that's where the big man will sit down and then always claim that work is going on without anything really going on. How many students can such a place, such a position attend to? How result-oriented will it be? It's about results. It's not about assumptions. It's not about what you feel. It's about getting the job done. So I join you to propose for faculty counselors, decentralized. You have to be close to the students that you are dealing with. So if it is decentralized, it will be much, much better. And then when you assign 70 students to one student, to one professor, how can that be? But if you have a counselor at the faculty level, I can assure you, yes, 70 persons can be assigned to you if the faculty population, if the student population of the faculty is large. No problem, because the counselor is close. So once you work with the counselor, like I said, follow up. Do a follow-up. The student, you have recognized this in the student, you have discussed with the student, and you don't have to play the role of a counselor. Go to the office of the counselor in the faculty. It's close to the student. So yes, we can cope with many students per professor or per lecturer when there is a decentralized counseling system. That has to be. And let me conclude, because I know we'll be concluding. It is important that there is nothing much can be done in improving the psychosocial space in tertiary institutions in Nigeria and other African countries without the policy makers. And it is a must do if we must get the full potential of our students and also build the type of society we want. What comes out from the university, no matter how we underplay it, largely influence what the society becomes. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much. I don't think we could have put it better than how you've presented it. Thank you very much for your time, Prof. And thank you to all the contributors. Your contribution has really been very useful. We really encourage you to relate with this presentation again and again. And we don't want it to be a theoretical presentation. We want you to begin to incorporate, even if it's 1 point or 2 points or 3 points that you can pick from what had been said today, and be intentional about incorporating it into your classroom and into your relationship. I remembered when we joined the university, then we will round up with this. I once went to a faculty and I said, I'm looking for Professor so. The man looked at me and said, who are you to be calling a professor by his name? I said, but I've called him professor, so what else do you expect of me? That is not what we want to see. We want to see a situation where students will not rush to social media to report the university, but they will first come to you. They can have direct access to you as their lecturer. They can have confidence in you. They can see you as fathers, as parents, as mothers, who can actually lead them in the right way and create other professionals like you or better than you from them. So this is what we want to say. We want to say thank you very much again, Professor Aka, for your time. We thank everyone who are taking time to stay. We know we will stay very long past the normal time, but I know this had been an interesting discussion, and that was why people really took time to stay. So on this note, I want to say that we will be closing the seminar now. The next seminar will be announced on the platform, and we encourage you to also relate with it and be part of it. If you also have, you are intending to present a seminar, you can also write through the platform or to the admin, and possibly you'll be scheduled. We have quite a number of interesting seminars coming up. I saw a list today. We have a list up until about January or February next year already, and they are very interesting, and they are not just academic. There are also things that has to do with different aspects of life of an academia. Thank you very much. On this note, we bring the seminar of today to a close. Thank you.